بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا مولانا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك وعلمنا من لدنك علما وانفعنا بالدين الكريم. أما بعد, Alhamdulillah, we're up to our 15th class now. So Alhamdulillah, we're going well, Alhamdulillah. And inshallah, we're going to finish Zakat today. Hopefully next week we can finish the entire Siyam in one class, and Hajj maybe in 2 classes. And after that we'll be done with all the ibadah, the first section of the inshallah. Now, inshallah, most likely next week we might have a short quiz, inshallah, but I will confirm that tonight, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And inshallah ta'ala, just a short quiz, just make sure that we remember most of the important rulings in salah and zakat. Before we start with zakat, with the second part of zakat, last class there was a small mistake, slip of tongue, and I think it was regarding the jaza'ah. So I mentioned in 61 camels, I mentioned hiqqa or something like that. What is given is a jaza'ah, which is a 4-year-old sheep. Okay, inshallah, let's get into the class, inshallah. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, says, فصل والخليطان يزكيان زكاة الواحد ب7 شرائط إذا كان المراح واحدا والمسرح واحدة والمرعى واحدة والفحل واحدة والمشرب واحدة والحالب واحدة وموضع الحلب واحدا. Each flocks extract the zakat of a single flock providing 7 conditions on it. A. The livestock fed in the same place at night. B. They gather in the same place before being fed to drink. C. The pasture is the same. D. The sky is the same. E. What they drink is the same. F. What they are milked by is the same person. G. The place of milk. Okay. So today's class is about mixed zakat. Now, mixed zakat means that 2 owners own something together, or something that is similar to being together. So they own the same thing, or they own something that seems as if it is one, as if it is the same. So this in Arabic, mixing something is called khulqa. Khulqa means when something has been mixed, or when something is mixed. Khulqa. So the most famous types of khulqa out there are 2. Number 1, the first one is called khulqatu shuyu'. Khulqatu shuyu', meaning something that is mixed in every aspect. Something that is one in every aspect. And another way to explain this is that these two things cannot be separated. You can't differentiate, you can't tell the difference between what Karam owns and what Uthman owns. You can't tell the difference. You don't know which sheep is owned by Karam and which one is owned by Uthman, but you know that they own half, for example. And the example of this, like I said, is that two people inherit something. If you inherit something and there's other inheritors other than you, immediately you share that thing. You share what is inherited. So if two brothers, for example, inherited 100 sheep. 100 sheep inherited by two brothers. They would own how many each? 50, yeah? Now, which 50 are yours, which 50 are your brothers? We don't know. So we would consider them one, and we would give them the same, we would take the same amount of zakat out as we would take from one person who owns 100 sheep. That's how you do it. Now, so in this case, if the wealth that is shared by both parties reaches the minimum amount of zakat, they must give zakat as if they are one, as if it's one person. Now, if they both own shares in this money that zakat must be paid on, but one owns a higher percentage. So one owns 20, for example, the other one owns 50. Okay, then the percent that is taken out from the person with less income is a smaller percent than the percent that is taken from the person with a higher percentage. Basically. So you both pay zakat according to the amount of earned, but you're considered one. Now, if they both own less than the minimum, okay, so one owns 5, the other person owns 5. Okay, then there's no zakat. If they both own 10 each, there's no zakat. Also, if one owns less than, but Amr must give 4/5 of a sheep, and Zayd must give 1/5 of a sheep. Now, the other type of khulta, of mixing, is called khultatul jiwar. So when both owners own something that is right next to the other type of zakat. This means that they don't actually own the same exact sheep or camels or cows, but their animals grow together, they are raised together, they are fed together. And this type is also considered one, but there are more conditions for it. And this is the type that the author mentions in the book. So they must unite in the following. Number one, where they drink. The animals must drink from the same area. Number two, where they are taken to graze. So if one of the sheep is taken to graze on a hill that's full of hay and food, and the other ones are taken to the middle of the desert, then they're not considered khulta, they're not considered one. The place where they bring back at night, where they sleep, the shepherd must be one. And the male sheep who impregnates them is also one, unless they're from different species. And also the place that they are milked. They all milked together. These are the conditions that must apply if you want to consider them as one. Now, in the Shafi'i madhab, other than livestock can also be mixed. Other than livestock can also be mixed. And we can consider that one. This is not in the other madhab. And the example of how we should have the same owner or the same person who takes care of them, the same area where they are brought up in, would be like in cash, for example, that they have the same safe, the same area they kept, the money is kept, the same guard, same person who guards the safe. That would be the example. But khulfa or mixing zakat can be applied in other than animals according to the madhab of the Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. Any questions? Okay. 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 After that, he says, فصل ونصاب الذهب 20 مثقال وفيه ربع العشر وهو نصف مثقال وفيما زاد بحسبه ونصاب الورق 100 درهم وفيه ربع العشر وهو 5 دراهم وفيما زاد بحسابه ولا تجب للحلي المباح زكاة. The minimum amount of gold is 20 مثقال, 85 grams or 2.73 troy ounces, on which there is a zakat of 2.5%, a half مثقال. Anything above this is calculated according to the same proportion. The minimum amount of silver is 200 grams, 595 grams or 19.16 troy ounces, on which there is a zakat of 2.5%, 5 grams. And anything above this is calculated according to the same proportion. Zakat is not obligatory on lawful goods. Okay. So I think we spoke about this in detail in the last class, inshallah. We mentioned the conditions of zakat on gold and silver. Inside those conditions, we mentioned the details of gold and silver. And basically, if someone earns that amount, then they need to give 40th of that in zakat. And we mentioned that lawful jewelry is the jewelry that lays well. After he says ونصاب الزروع والثمار 5 أوسق وهي 1600 رطل بالعراقي وفيما زاد بحسابه وفيما إذا سقيت بماء السماء أو السيح العشر وإن سقيت بدولاب أو بنضح نصف العشر. Agriculture and food. The minimum amount for agriculture is 5 أوسق, 1,600 Iraqi liters, 109.84 kilograms, or 1,344.5 pounds. Anything additional is calculated according to the proportion. A zakat of 10% is owed if the crop was irrigated through rain or flooding. If it was irrigated by a bucket or by conveying water from one place to another, then it i.e. 5%. And I think we mentioned that also in last class. So the details that are different here is just that it depends on the way the agriculture is watered, basically. And according to that, the percent will be different in zakat. After that, he mentions trade goods. He says, فصل وتقوم عروض التجارة عند الحول بما اشتريت به ويخرج من ذلك ربع العشر وما استخرج من معادن الذهب والفضة يخرج منه ربع العشر للحال وما يوجد من الركاز فيه الخمس. Trade goods. The value of trade goods is appraised at the end of the year based on the currency with which the goods were purchased. A zakat of 2.5% is taken from its value. A zakat of 2.5% is taken from gold, silver, or immediately after separating the ore from the dirt. The zakat of 20% is taken from gold, silver, and silver. Okay. So we also talked about the zakat on trade goods, so we're not going to talk about that again. But the new thing here are 2 other types of zakat that the author mentions at the end of the page. He says, number 1, he says, وما استخرج من معادن الذهب والفضة يخرج منه ربع العشر في الحال. Okay. So we spoke about trade goods, and we said that at the end of the year, the owner calculates how much it costs, but it doesn't matter if it goes up and down throughout the year, not like other types of zakat. Now, that's all we need to know about trade goods, but there's another type of zakat, okay, that is the zakat of what is taken from the ground. What is dug up? Okay, so it's known in Arabic as al-ma'adin, the metals that are found in the ground. Now, the Hanbali madhab takes this matter into another extreme and says, not a bad extreme of course, that zakat must be given on petrol, on steel, on everything in the ground. Okay? In the Shafi'i madhab, what is taken out from the ground, zakat must be given on, but it only applies to gold and silver. So if you dig up a piece of gold, then immediately you give zakat. You give a percentage of that in zakat. Okay? And we talked about details of this in Najat, everyone remembers. The reason it is ربع العشر, basically 1/40th, is that it is the same as the zakat of gold and silver. The other type of zakat is known as al-rikaz, which is translated as treasure. And the definition of rikaz in fiqh is the money that existed from before Islam. So this money must have a stamp or something that proves that it was from one of the empires before Islam on it. And if someone finds that type of money, okay, they need to give a fifth of it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A fifth of it, and not a 40th. And the reason behind that is that it is treated similar to al-ghanima, similar to what is gained in war. As Allah says, وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُمْ شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ. Whatever you gain in war, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is given, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes it from. So it's given in a certain structure by the Imam to those who deserve. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in that. And alhamdulillah, these are all the types of zakat al-mal. The zakat on wealth. After that, we're going to enter into zakat al Fitr, inshallah, which is what I want to focus on today. Any questions on zakat al-mal? Inshallah. Okay. After that, he says, فصل وتجب زكاة الفطر بثلاثة شرائط. الإسلام وبغروب الشمس من آخر يوم من شهر رمضان ووجود الفضل عن قوته وقوت عياله في ذلك اليوم ويزكي عن نفسه وعن من تلزمه نفقته من المسلمين صاعا من قوت بلده وقدره 5 أرطال وثلث بالعراقي. زكاة الفطر. زكاة الفطر is obligatory when three conditions are met. A, the person is a Muslim. B, the sun has set on the last day of Ramadan. C, on that day, the person pays has provision best of his own needs and the needs of his family. One gives zakat for oneself, and all Muslims one is required to support. The amount is 1 sa, 2.03 liters of the stored staple foods of the region. This amount equals 5 1/3 Iraqi ripple. Okay. So like we mentioned, Zakat al Fitr is the second type of zakat. And it is the zakat that is given upon the body. So every body has compulsory zakat that is given upon him. And that's why this zakat is given upon little babies who don't own anything. It's given upon family members, given upon yourself, on behalf of family members, on behalf of yourself. So the guardian of the young children would give zakat on behalf of them. So it's zakat of the body. It purifies the body. And in some of the ahadith, Rasulullah said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made zakat al-fitr compulsory to clean the body of the person who fasts Ramadan. So in our fasting, we still make mistakes, and we're not 100% purified. This zakat cleans us out and purifies us perfectly before Eid. So for that reason, this zakat is known as fitrah or Zakat al Zakat of the body, or Zakat al Fitr, of course, 3 names. Now, the amount of the zakat is set. It's 1 sa', 1 sa'. And a sa' in Arabic are 4 mud. Mud is a medium grown man who has his hands both spread out. He spreads out his hands, and whatever he can carry in his hands is considered a mud. 4 of them equal 1 sa'. So as we can see, a sa' isn't just the liters, as I said, but it's actually a measurement. It's a measurement that can differ in weight according to different things that are weighed. And that's why the scholars today, when they go in kilos, they usually overestimate it a little bit, just in case. So they give 3 kilos, something like that, just to be exact. Now, the author says zakat is a sa' of qut. Qut, we mentioned this before, earlier in zakat, and we said that qut means sustainable kinds of food. Food that people can live on. So sustainable food would be like rice, different types of seeds that people can live on. But to go into detail, the larger books of fiqh mention that not any qut is enough. So the wording of the author said qut, okay, that's a general phrase, but in detail in fiqh, our ai mentioned that not any qut is significant. And the main types of qut that are significant are wheat, barley, corn, rice. They also mention other types that are not very famous today, like mash. If they say it's a green bean, something like that. Chickpeas, lentils, fava beans, dates, raisins, aqid. Aqid is dried milk, okay? And also cheese. Now, zakat must be given in food. So you can't pay money on behalf of this food. You can't just go and tell how much that food will cost and give it in money. That doesn't count in the Shafi'i method. Doesn't count in the Shafi'i method, although it counts in the Hanafi method. So you need to give it in food, and you don't just choose one of these foods, no. You look at the city that you're living in, and the type of food of these that the people of that city use as a qut, as a sustainable food that they live off, is what you give zakat. So غالب قوت البلد, the most famous and well-known type of qut that is used in that city. So most countries in the world, rice would probably be the answer to this. Most people give zakat in rice. Most countries in the world live off rice. Nearly everywhere. If you go to Africa, rice. If you go to Asia, rice. Middle East, rice. Most people live off rice. So the sustainable qut that is used by the people of that country is what you need to give zakat. Okay. Now, zakat must be, like I said, from sustainable foods that are common or most common in the city that are used. And zakat is considered on the city that the person who zakat is being given from lives in. So if I'm giving zakat from myself, I pay in the food that is eaten by the people of my city. My kids are living overseas in a different country, say in Egypt, okay? And let's say that the food that is famous there is wheat. Then I need to give zakat in wheat, and I can't give zakat in rice. So the person you're giving zakat on behalf of, you consider their city, where they live, and you give zakat upon that. Now, how would you do that? How would you give zakat on someone in a different city when the people in your city don't eat that food? The answer is that you give it in that city, and the simplest way to do that is to authorize someone in that city to give zakat on behalf of you. So you send them the money, and you tell them, on my zakat, on my behalf, please buy 3 kilos of wheat and give it to the poor people of the city. and that is my zakat. That's how you do it. That's the simplest way to do zakat. If anyone wants to give zakat according to the Shafi'i madhab, most people they find it's too much trouble, so they turn Hanafi on the day of Eid al-Fitr. They pay $10 or $20 and then done. But if you ever want to, that's how you do it. Okay. Now, like I said, zakat must be given in the country of the person who's being paid for. So in the food of that country, and also in that country that's being paid for. And like I said, it must be given in original form also. So if we're giving zakat of wheat, we can't give zakat in flour. It has to be in its original form. In its original form. Can't crush it down and turn it into something else and then give zakat in it. Now, when does zakat al Fitr become compulsory? So zakat al Fitr becomes compulsory upon every Muslim who lives a moment of Ramadan and a moment of Shawwal. So they are alive just before the Adhan of Maghrib, the last day of Ramadan. They must be alive then. And also alive for a moment after the Adhan of Maghrib. That's the person whose zakat is given. If someone is born after the Adhan, we don't need to give zakat. Someone dies before the Adhan, then also they don't need to pay zakat for that. It only becomes compulsory when the person lives in both Shawwal and Ramadan for a moment. Like I said, there's no zakat on someone who passes away on the last day of before Maghrib. And there's no zakat upon a baby who's born after the Adhan of Maghrib. Now, also, the rulings of zakat don't change for someone who gets married after the Adhan of Maghrib. So someone says, my wedding is going to be after Adhan of Maghrib, last day of Ramadan. I'm going to get married just before Eid. Okay? Does he have to pay zakat for his wife that year? No. Why? Because she wasn't dependent on him for a moment of Ramadan and a moment of Eid. Okay. Now, it's permissible to give this zakat from the beginning of Ramadan. From the beginning of Ramadan, okay? But it's best to give it after Fajr and before Eid, so on the way to Eid prayer. And many countries, they do this. If you ever go overseas for Eid, you probably notice that there's 4 people sitting on the way to Salah. And people would give them the zakat as they go to Eid. So it's a sunnah to give it to the 4 people on the way to Eid. And even if they're not sitting there, to go to their houses, for example, you would know where they live, and you go give them your zakat, and then you go to Eid prayer. So it's done before Eid. And it's disliked to delay it until after Eid prayer. But it still counts to give after Eid prayer. But you shouldn't delay it until Maghrib. It's disliked. After Maghrib, it becomes haram. Delay it that day. To delay it that day. So you need to give it from day 1 Ramadan until Maghrib, the day of Eid. If you do it in that time, then there's no sin on you. If you do it after Maghrib, then may Allah accept from you, but you're also sinful for delaying. So you need to make tawbah for delaying your zakat, unless you delay it for a reason outside of your hands. Okay. Some people who do not need to pay zakat. What is it? Number 1, a non-Muslim is not asked to pay zakat al Fitr. A non-Muslim is not asked to pay zakat al Fitr. Number 2, a slave. This is similar to normal zakat. Okay, slave is not asked to pay zakat al Fitr because he doesn't own any. Number 3, someone who cannot find extra wealth that night and the day of Eid. So the night before Eid and the day of Eid, they don't have extra wealth. Or they have wealth, but they need it. So they need to have extra wealth that they don't need for themselves, nor for the individuals underneath them that they have to pay, that depend on them, and the animals that depend on them also. So it has to exceed all of that. And once they have extra money after that, then they have to pay zakat. Someone who can't find extra money doesn't need to pay zakat. Also, it must exceed the money needed for workers and appropriate clothing for that person and books of knowledge. It's the basics that a Muslim should have in their life. This is all counted. Okay. If there's enough money for zakat to be paid for 3 people, but this household has 10, for example, how do we do it? How should we start? So the person in charge of the household starts with themselves. Pays zakat for themselves. Number 2, their wife. Number 3, the young children. Number 4, their father. Number 5, their mother. And number 6, the older children in the house. If someone can't pay zakat for everyone, but if they can, then they pay for them all. Allahu Ta'ala. There's some questions in the future. I'll read. Should one pay? What should one do? Person forgot and didn't pay zakat for 2 years. If you didn't pay zakat for 2 years, you pay it. The moment you remember, you pay it. But you can't. Zakat doesn't go. It doesn't leave your dhimma. Doesn't become not compulsory anymore. If someone hasn't paid zakat for 2 years, they have to pay it for those 2 years. Another question says, if a person gives zakat on your behalf, but forgot to intend that the zakat is on your behalf, is it valid? So we're going to mention this, I think, in the end of this class, I believe. Actually, I'm sure we're going to mention it, inshallah. Yeah, we're going to get to that in this class, inshallah ta'ala. And generally, you need to intend your own zakat. So before you give it to a person who gives it on your behalf, you should intend that it's zakat. And the intention must happen before he gives it to the poor person. If you haven't intended, then it's zakat. So you need to intend for your own zakat. And the details of this will come, inshallah, later on in the lesson. Any other questions? Yes, but someone else, like someone giving on, means that tawqid. You're asking them, you're giving them money. And you say, can you please give it to the poor people? Because I'm not able to. So in fiqh, there's a whole section called the wikala, when you authorize someone to do something on your behalf, not with their money, with your own money. So you give it to them, and then they do it on your behalf. There's conditions for that. And in zakat, the attention needs to come from you before he gives it to the poor person. Okay. After that he says, فصل وتدفع الزكاة إلى الأصناف الثمانية الذين ذكرهم الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز بقوله تعالى إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل وإلى من يوجد منهم ولم يجوز الاختصار على أقل من 3 من كل صنف إلا العامل.
Distributing zakat. Zakat is given to the 8 categories that Allah Most High mentioned. By the book, when He Most High said, the alms are only for the poor and those who collect them, those whose hearts are to be reconciled, and to free the captives and the debtors, and for the cause of Allah and for the wayfarer. One does not give to less than 3 recipients of each category when they exist, except for zakat workers.
وخمسة لا يجوز دفعها إليهم الغني بمال أو كسب والعبد وبنو هاشم وبنو المطلب والكافر ومن تلزم المزكي نفقة ولا يدفعها إليهم باسم الفقراء والمساكين.
Impermissible recipients. It is not permissible to give zakat to 5 types of people. Number 1, someone who is self-sufficient due to wealth or worth. Number 2, slave. Number 3, descendants of Bani Hashim or Bani al-Muttalib. Number 4, non-Muslims. And number 5, whoever the zakat giver is required to support. zakat is not given to them under the category of the poor and the impoverished.
So who can receive the zakat and who can't receive zakat, which is one of the most important parts of this. And the first type of people who can receive zakat, and they mentioned in the ayah, is the faqir. The faqir. And faqir means someone who is extremely poor. They don't have anything. Okay? So in our madhab, so Allah SWT mentions faqir and miskin, two types. Faqir means extremely poor. Allah SWT says in Surah Al-Baqarah, لِلْفُقَرَاءِ الَّذِينَ أُحْصِرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ ضَرْبًا فِي الْأَرْضِ يَحْسَبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُ أَغْنِيَاءَ. Says the faqir, the fuqara, the poor people, that have been restricted. الَّذِينَ أُحْصِرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ ضَرْبًا فِي الْأَرْضِ. They can't even navigate. They can't do anything that they want to do, or any good they want to do in their life. And if someone was to look at them, they think they're rich because they didn't ask for money. So faqir in the Shafi'i madhab is extremely poor and more poor than a miskin. Other madhabs say the opposite. But anyway, one of them is extremely poor, the other one is someone who has money but not enough money. Okay. So this is someone who does not own anything or doesn't have an appropriate job, nor has an appropriate job to secure food, clothing, housing, and other needs. Someone who really needs help and support in every way. A miskin is someone who is in need. They own something, but not enough. Not enough to support themselves for the rest of their life. For the rest of their life. They might have money today, tomorrow they don't have money. There's nothing, that they can rely on. So someone who has money or an income that pays for part of the mentioned needs for the rest of their life, the life of an individual person. So if someone needs, for example, $100 a day and only gets $60 a day, that would be miskin. That would be miskin. Now, if someone's able to work, there's nothing preventing them from working, then they're not considered faqir miskin. We're going to get to that inshallah. Someone who's not able to work, can't find the job, and doesn't earn enough, this person is the person who can receive zakat. Now, if a relative or a husband is paying for these expenses, okay, then the person is not considered eligible for zakat. Someone's paying for them. They don't earn anything because someone's taking care of them. Then we can't give them zakat. That's it. If the person has money to buy clothes, get housing, or buy tools to work, so they're able to set themselves up, then they're also not eligible for zakat. They have to be someone who needs help. Someone who needs help. Here are some things that if you own, they don't prevent you from being eligible for zakat. Okay, number one, clothes. Even if these clothes are for special occasion. If someone's got a nice thobe or abaya for Eid, that's okay. You can have nice clothes for occasions. So owning clothes doesn't prevent you from being eligible for zakat. Also, jewelry that is usually used. So if a sister has jewelry that she wears that most ladies would wear in her case, then we don't need to consider her out of the category of zakat. Yeah, as long as it's jewelry that is usually worn by the people in her in her rank or in her state. Number three, a place to live that is not extravagant. So if someone has a small little house, but they can't earn enough to live, they can always still give them zakat. Say, oh, but he owns a house. So we say, no, you have to sell your house and rent for the rest of your life. Okay, if you can't get a job, and then we'll give you zakat. No. Owning a house does not prevent you from giving zakat. But if someone owns a mansion that's worth 10 million, and they own one person, all they need is a one bedroom studio, then that's different. Okay, I'm owning the house. No. a book of knowledge that they needed. It's also something that does not prevent the person from being eligible. So if you have a scholar who likes to read a lot, we don't say, sell all your books, and then we can give him zakah. That's harder for someone with knowledge than selling their own house. Yeah, more difficult for them, because the need of their books is really what that gives them the deen. It helps the community. Someone of personal knowledge is someone who helps the community, supports them spiritually. So it's important that they exist, basically. Also, haram income does not prevent the person from being eligible for zakat. Someone earns money, so riba, haram. He's not allowed to take that money, and he's not allowed to use that money. So it's not considered proper income. They need to get rid of that money and not use it. It doesn't prevent them from being eligible of zakat. The only income they can find is a haram income, then they're eligible for zakat. And next one is donations. If a relative is paying for you, you're not eligible for zakat. But if you're just going to get a donation from someone, then you don't have to live off donations for the rest of your life. Yeah, most people don't want to live off donations. They don't want to feel that people are taking care of them. So donations is different. But if a relative is paying for you, then you're not eligible for zakat. And owning wealth that is far away and not money that they can't get. So in the country they're in now, they're considered poor, and they can be given from zakat. Now, the third type of people who can receive zakat are workers who collect zakat. People who work in the zakat industry, basically. So in most Muslim countries, there's a zakat industry where the leader collects the zakat and then distributes it. Okay. Even if there isn't that, there should be one. So it's not just like an Islamic organization, but it's a zakat industry where they have people appointed to work. Now, these people, if they don't have a wage, they're eligible for zakat. Okay, but if they work in the zakat industry with a wage, then they're not eligible for zakat. They're getting paid for what they do. So this includes a person who collects the zakat from the individual. He goes to the houses and knocks on the doors and says, "Yallah, give me zakat, give me zakat." Like the time of Prophet ﷺ. Okay. Number two, the person who distributes it. It's another person who goes around and gives zakat to the needy. The person who protects it, and the person who counts it. These are all included. So the people who work in that industry to make zakat easy for other people. The fourth category for zakat are al-mu'allafati qulub, the peoples whose hearts are to be reconciled. This is mentioned in the same ayah. Okay, and there are four types of people who can get zakat for their heart to be reconciled. Number one, a Muslim whose Islam is weak. Someone who just entered Islam, and you can tell they're really down and not motivated, and they need a lot of support. This person can receive zakat in order for them to, inshallah ta'ala, strengthen their Islam, because the strength of one Muslim is strength for the whole ummah. Number two, a person whose Islam is not weak, okay, but they're a leader in their community, and giving them zakat would open the door for other people in their community. That is also someone who can be given zakat. Number three, a Muslim who will spare us the trouble of a group of non-Muslims attacking us or harming us. Someone who's someone very well known and big in that area, and by giving them zakat, they'll take care of everything for us. So khalas, we give them zakat. And the fourth is a Muslim who spare us the harm of the people who refuse to pay zakat. So in the Shafi'i madhab, zakat is not given to non-Muslims at all. Okay, just because a non-Muslim hasn't accepted Islam, we don't give them zakat to accept Islam. We're not going to beg anyone to accept Islam. We don't go and ask people, "Yallah, you want to become Muslim? I'll give you money and become Muslim." We don't buy people like that. Okay. And some of the other madhahib, they consider that someone who needs encouragement to Islam can take zakat. In our madhab, that doesn't exist. Only Muslims can give zakat because Islam doesn't, is never the lower hand. Always has the upper hand. Muslims don't need others to accept Islam. Islam is what they need. Okay, the fifth category is debtors, people in debt, people who are in debt. And there are multiple types of debt that are zakat eligible. Okay, they include, number one, a person who's gone into debt to fix a problem between two Muslims or two groups of Muslims. So the people in this masjid, okay, are fighting with the people in another masjid. And there's a huge war between them and stuff. Then a Muslim comes and he says, you know what, I'm going to pay and give money for this problem to finish. He's going to invest $1 million to fix the problem or something like that. Then he can take zakat, pay that debt. Number two, a person who took debt because they guaranteed another person's debt. Someone else is in debt and they paid the other person's debt, but there are conditions for this. There are strict conditions for this mentioned in the Mongol books. It's not just anyone. Okay? Can't be someone who's playing games. Can't be someone who doesn't need it. It can't be a debt that is not doesn't need to be paid for. The third one is a person who took debt to pay for the needs of themselves and their family. Okay, and the debt is due, and they have nothing to pay it back. That's also a type of debt that can be done. And the last one is a person who took debt to pay for a general service that would help the Muslims, like building a masjid or renovating a masjid. And the debt is due, that person can take from zakat. Okay. The sixth type is in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are volunteers, people who don't get a wage, but they work in the army. They go into battle that is lawful, halal type of battle, something that is lawful and something that doesn't go against Islam. Now, they use this money while they're traveling in the battle. Once they return the rest of the money. And if they don't go into war in that battle, then they give all the money back. So they don't just get it as a prize. You went to battle, yallah, take half of the zakat. They get it and they take it to help themselves because they don't have a wage. People don't have a wage. They are people who are, giving their time to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they get enough money to support them while they are on battle. And the seventh one is Ibn Sabil, boyfriend. So someone who's traveling. They're on a travel that's halal, not haram. A lawful travel. And they don't have enough money to return to the destination. So they're stuck. Okay? So they're given enough money to reach a destiny, but there's also conditions to this that are mentioned in Mongol books. A lot of detailed conditions. Generally, these are the categories. Now, I also want to mention that there are general conditions for all of these categories. Okay, so the conditions for all of these categories to be eligible. These conditions apply to all of them. Number one, freedom. I mentioned that before. Islam. So non-Muslims cannot be given zakat, and the only time non-Muslims can take from zakat is if a non-Muslim worker, okay, works in the zakat industry. So they're given from the share of the workers. In zakat, we're going to get into this inshallah, there are shares. The imam gives zakat in shares. So he must give to all the categories. There's a share for the workers in zakat. They can be given from that share, but they're not given directly from the zakat. Other than that, a non-Muslim cannot take any zakat. Okay. To not be a Hashimite, can't be from Bani Hashim, nor from Bani Muttalib. These two tribes can't take zakat. Haram for them to take the zakat, according to the famous opinion of the Shafi'i madhab. Some late scholars have allowed it in these times because the people al-Bayt don't have awqaf, don't have any ghanim when it comes to them. But the famous opinion is that it's haram for them to take from zakat, because zakat is money that is used. This is the filth of the money. It's the worst of the money. So it's not given to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Muslims should give from their own pockets to the family of the Prophet. They shouldn't be depending on zakat. That's humiliating them. That's what it means. Okay, and the fourth one is to be someone who has been, to not be, so it's to not be someone, there's a mistake here, to not be someone who has been prevented in an Islamic way to buy and sell their own money. In fiqh, there's a whole section called al-hajar. When someone's prevented, someone's not allowed to use their own money. The imam is in control of their money. Why? Because they waste their money all the time. They're not someone who can be trusted with their own money. In Islam, we're not allowed to have people in the community who are out there spending, wasting money all the time. Okay? You know, boys going out and buying expensive cars and doing going out and stuff. These people should be stopped. Okay? We're not allowed to have them in the community and then tell them, it's your own money, but you know, you should make a good choice. No. We don't have this. Yeah? If someone is wasting the money and harming others, then they're stopped for a while until they go back to their sense, and then they give them the money back. That's why Imam Nawawi, there's a lot of details into how someone can be in this category. But generally, if someone from when they're young, before they reach the age of puberty, has been doing major sins and stuff, haven't been worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala properly, wasting their money, and then they reach the age of puberty while still not being practicing, then this person isn't eligible, isn't trusted with their money. But if someone reaches the age of puberty and they're good, and then they change later on, then they're not prevented from using their own money unless the imam prevents them later on. That's what Imam Nawawi in his fatwa, he was asked this question. He said, is it permissible to give zakat to someone who's reached the age of puberty but doesn't pray? In Imam Nawawi's fatwa. And he answered that if they reach the age of puberty while not praying, okay, then they cannot be given zakat. Okay? Although it may be given to their guardian on their behalf. The guardian is the one who's going to pay for it. But if they started to leave prayer after puberty, then zakat can be given to them, unless the imam has declared that they should not be given a zakat. Okay, how do we intend when we give zakat? Now, every act of worship needs an intention in Islam. Every act of worship. And we mentioned earlier in fiqh that intention in most acts of worship has to be done while we do the act of worship. In zakat, we mentioned that it can be done before the act of worship. So zakat is similar to fasting, similar to kafarat al-yameen. It can be done earlier. So zakat doesn't need to be done while giving zakat, but it can be done earlier. The way to intend for your wealth is to say to yourself, you don't have to say out loud. You can say out loud if you want, but just to say to yourself, tell yourself that this money is zakat for my wealth. You put this money aside, this is my zakat. Okay? You know that yourself. The way to intend zakat al Fitr is to say, this is my zakat. That's it. Your intention would count. It's best to intend when giving the zakat to the person who's going to distribute it. When you give it to the hand, then you intend. But it's conditioned to intend before the zakat is distributed. If someone just takes money from you and gives it to the poor person, and he said, oh, now let me intend that zakat, doesn't count as zakat. And the last thing today, inshallah, is how do we distribute zakat? There's a quote by Imam Nawawi that is here, but I didn't get to just Google Translate, and I didn't get to read it, so I didn't have the time. So you might ignore what's on the screen. But generally, in the Shafi'i madhab, zakat must be given equally. It must be given between the different types. So whatever exists from these 7 different types, the faqir, the miskin, the people who are working, the wayfarers, okay, whoever the imam can find from these types, he must give zakat to them all. He can't just give all the zakat to one type. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these people are the ones who deserve your zakat. if we are choosing one and leaving the other out, we're not fixing the problem. Yeah, we're just preferring one type. But if we're giving them all zakat, the issue and the problems of the community will be solved together. So for that reason, it has to be given to them all. Okay. And they say that it must be at least 3 people from every category have to be given zakat. So that's how the zakat is distributed in the Shafi'i madhab. So if you're giving zakat in the Shafi'i madhab, you need to look around and then you can find that probably in the country we're in, we don't have in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't have people who work for zakat. We don't have half of the categories. But then you might find the faqir, miskin, maybe a wafer. So you find 3 categories, so you give zakat to these 3. That's how you do it. Unless you're under an imam, and that imam takes the zakat from everyone and he distributes it, then it's not up to you. He does it the way he does it, according to the madhab that he follows, and that's it. But if you're giving it individually, or if you are the imam yourself, then you should give it to all categories of zakat. Allah ta'ala. Okay. Now there's a few questions in the chat, inshallah. Someone asked, can we give zakat to organizations in Australia like National Zakat Foundation? This person wants to create a problem. Okay. I don't know exactly how these organizations run. I don't know the conditions of this organization, so I can't just say this organization can take zakat and this one can't. But if the organization goes according to one of the 4 madhahib, okay, if you go according to one of the 4 madhahib, then it's permissible to follow that madhab and give them no zakat. So if we have an organization that has a Hanafi leader or something, and we decide to give zakat according to the Hanafi madhab, then inshallah our zakat counts. But if it's just a zakat organization, that's it. You don't know any details about it, that's not enough. We should look into it and ask them, how do you distribute your zakat? Do you give zakat for general matters of the Muslims, like just building masajid and doing this and that? That doesn't count. Yeah. Do the people who work in your zakat foundation take a percentage of the zakat? Yeah. How does it work? You have to look into these things, and if you find someone who does it correctly with all the conditions, even in one madhab, alhamdulillah, that's good. There's many organizations that can be trusted, inshallah ta'ala. Just look for them, inshallah. But I don't know about this organization in it. Another person asked, let's say a person earns money by doing something which is not technically illegal, but is halal. Would this be haram income? Someone earns money by doing something that is not technically legal, but is halal. Would this be haram income? I don't know what that would be. Okay, so if it's halal income, it's halal income. If it's haram income, it's haram income. Okay, there's no like middle ground. Well, even that, like I said, it depends on what you're talking about. Usually, we shouldn't go against the law, and going against the law many times can put us into haram. So that's general advice, but it really depends on what you're asking about. If something's haram, it's haram. If it's halal income, if it's a way that it's halal to earn money from that way, then it's halal income. But that depends on the. Okay, that's all the questions in the group, inshallah. Any questions? Yeah. Yes. No, not beings. Not beings. Freedom means not beings. Yes. Yeah, so if someone's in jail, okay, then someone takes a death to get them out. Usually that's how it works. But like I said, again, in that country, if they're following a certain madhab or a certain fatwa, then that's
Priority to give the zakat in the country where you reside. If, for example, you see zakat organization in a country that the way of if you okay for you give them zakat to another country where you don't stay.
So in our madhab, it's compulsory to give zakat in the country that you in. Yeah, you must give zakat in the country. the original case. But if it's hard, then there are other opinions that you can take that allow you to give zakat in other countries. Other opinions. But the general case is that you should give zakat in your country if it's possible. Now, like I said, if there's no organization possible and you can't give it yourself, look, maybe you can give it yourself. It's not impossible. Giving zakat yourself is not impossible. It's not that hard. But like I said, it just needs some people to be a bit, think of it and be creative the way it's zakat. But inshallah, what I think is that in countries like this, we can find organizations who are reliable, I believe, and who follow proper fiqh structure, inshallah. Many. So inshallah, we don't have that issue. Other than that. Yes. Yes. From every category. Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you identify them? Some people know. People know. If you have like a proper organization, then they look into these things and they hide the confidential information. So, confidential information. So, if someone, I know even overseas, I remember this. Like, once when I was young, I wanted to give my own zakat, and I went to an organization. I said, I was in Saudi. I said, look, show me where to go, where the houses I can go to. I'm not going to talk to them. I just want to give them one zakat. I don't know how you guys distribute it. They said, look, we're never going to give you the information of individuals who came to us. Yeah. So probably, there will be people to know and to know the needs of these people through different ways. Yes. So inshallah, that's the whole book of zakat. Inshallah ta'ala. And zakat is a big topic. We didn't go through all the details of zakat. This book, like I said, we're trying to understand the Fard al-Ain and the general rulings that a Muslim should know to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like I said, fiqh is huge. There's no limit to fiqh. But generally, zakat, janaza, these topics, people don't discuss at all. When we go into buying and selling things, people don't study them at all. So when we explain them, we try to explain the basic rulings of these categories. But there's a lot more to learn, inshallah ta'ala. These are just the general guidelines that a Muslim should have an idea about in their life. Next one, study them and understand them, inshallah ta'ala. Next week, inshallah, when we go into Siyam, of course, we're talking to a lot more detail because Siyam is practical and everyone fast every year and everyone does it themselves. Zakat, like I said, usually we go to organizations. Siyam, we do it ourselves. Hajj, we do it ourselves. So we have to talk about the details of the details, inshallah ta'ala, like we did in Tahara, like we did in Salah. So I'm trying to make the explanation practical. When we need to go into detail, we'll do so. When we don't, we'll mention the general guidelines, inshallah ta'ala. And that way, we don't take too long and we give every section of the inshallah ta'ala. Allah ta'ala alam wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi. It didn't record. It's a mistake. It stopped sharing.